So last week, Formlabs announced the Form 2, which is our new, from the ground up, redesigned desktop stereolithography 3D printer. So in Form 2, we got to take everything that we learned with the Form 1 and Form 1 Plus, and we also got to design a machine with far more resources than we had when we designed the Form 1. So there's quite a bit that's new. There's kind of two big categories of what we improved. One is the reliability and print process, and the other is the ease of use and maintenance. So there's quite a bit. There's bigger build volume, 42% bigger build volume. There's a new optical system, so we're now building our own galvanometers. These are the motors that actually direct the laser in the machine. We've sealed the optical system so that it's much lower maintenance, it's easy to keep clean. Then we've changed the print process, so we now have a sliding peel mechanism, which is better for printing large cross-sectional areas. We also have a wiper, which improves reliability. There's temperature control for the resin, which also improves reliability. Then on the ease of use side, there's a new cartridge system, so you don't have to pour resin into the machine. And also Wi-Fi, Ethernet connectivity, it's easier to get models on the machine. And then a touch screen for interface with the machine. And then outside of the machine, we've added to Preform a new one-click print system, which runs all of our automatic setup tools, the orientation selection and support generation runs that automatically. And we've also redesigned the post-processing kit. And then there's a new part to the system, which is a web-connected part of it, where you can now check the status, because the machine is connected to the network, you can check the status of prints or receive notifications through a web interface. The way we think about ease of use and how this will grow 3D printing is that there's kind of a continuum of users. From on one end, there's the first users of 3D printing, aerospace and medical devices and things like that, people who really needed 3D printing. And all the way at the other end is everybody, your grandma. And there's a continuum between how much they need 3D printing and how much they're willing to invest in it. And in the beginning, when it was very difficult to use, you only saw those people who needed it the most. But as you make it easier to use, you're going to get to a wider and wider audience of people. So we're starting to get to some of these new groups, like, for example, the movie and game industry, that they didn't really use it before because they don't have to use it, but it adds value if they can. And so I think the easier we make it to use, the more of those groups we'll see, and we'll start to see new applications we haven't seen before. And ultimately, we'd like to get to a mass consumer 3D printer someday. Speed is, of course, something people are interested in, like build volume and resolution is sort of one of the main specs. Form 1 Plus is the fastest desktop 3D printer when you compare with the same layer thickness and the same density settings. And Form 2 is continuing with that. And when we release it, it'll be about the same speed as Form 1 Plus, and we have a lot of improvements lined up that will come as software updates over time. But personally, I actually believe that speed is not as important as people think. I think it gets a lot of attention and it's easy to understand. But when you go and look at what customers are actually doing with their machines, what they care about more is how much time they have to spend on the process, not how much time the machine has to spend. So far more important than speed is reliability. So if you spend half an hour getting a print ready, editing your model, setting it up, and then you print for 8 hours, and then you come back and the model's failed, and you have to do it again, that has a much bigger impact on speed than improving the print time by 20%. So we definitely want to grow Formlabs' presence in Europe. We already have had a lot of successful sales here, but we're not at the same level that we are in the U.S. And particularly in Germany, I think there's a lot more potential than we've realized. I think this is a great product for the German market. There's a huge industry of engineers and designers, and I think a special focus on sort of higher quality, higher precision, which fits really well with our product. And we need to have a better local presence, better language support, and with our office now in Berlin and with Michael Sorkin joining to lead that, I think we're going to make some really big steps. Every 3D printing process has its use case and has its sweet spot. So if you imagine a space of different performance parameters of how expensive the machine is, how large the build volume is, how high resolution, how fast, all these things, each process has a different part of that space. So there's no one machine that's great for everybody. But stereolithography, I think, has quite a few advantages and covers a lot of ground. So it's basically the best resolution and detailed surface finish. It's a process that's known for that. And one of the other big advantage, I think, is less well known, is that it has the most flexibility in terms of materials. So with one machine, you can cover a really wide range of types of materials, from rigid plastics to soft to castable materials to high impact strength. You can do a lot because of the flexibility of the process. And I think some of the things people used to think were negatives of stereolithography, that's what Formlabs has been working on. So people used to think stereolithography is very expensive. We changed that. People used to think stereolithography required ventilation and environmental controls. We changed that. They used to think it was very difficult to use, and we changed that. The current customer base is pretty wide. There's a big segment of rapid prototyping, product design. That's the biggest segment, but even that one is probably not even half of the total. So then there's jewelry, dental. There's people who make characters for movies and games. There are some hobbyists, I think we'll continue to have a pretty wide customer base like that. We're especially interested in growing the jewelry and dental side of the market because we haven't really directly addressed those yet, and now we're able to now that we're a bigger company. So I think we'll grow a lot on those segments. I think when we started, we didn't anticipate the movie and game industry sort of users, and they were one of the first successful customers. People at Pixar and DreamWorks and these movie studios. That was interesting to see. A lot of other sort of art applications. There's a guy who made a stop motion film with it. Things like that I don't think we expected to see. Our crowdfunding campaign was extremely successful and really kick-started the company in a great way. It's a huge part of the success we've had. I think the key to doing it well is to understand that the company is a lot more than a product, and even just a crowdfunding campaign is a lot more than just a product. We raised money before the crowdfunding campaign. We were able to put together really great marketing, and we were ready to go in terms of building the company immediately after that. I think a lot of people find themselves raising just enough money to build a product, but not enough to really turn it into a company and build out sales and customer support and all these things. So you have to ask yourself, are you trying to do a crowdfunding campaign to just do a one-time thing as a fun project, or are you trying to build a company? You should make sure you understand that decision. We talk a lot about Apple's design and business choices at Formlabs, so they're definitely, I think, an important sort of inspiration that we look at. I think what the most important thing that we try to take from Apple is that more important than having the absolute best specs or the first to implement a certain feature. What's more important is to actually implement those features well, make them easy to use, and provide a consistent experience. And so that's what we really focus on.